Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Roll-Wise podcast, the show where we talk about things related to RPGs and stuff adjacent. Today, we're going to be doing a little bit of reminiscing, give some updates on DC20, as well as talk about the Whispering Cairn, part of the Ageofworms adventure path, and a little bit of our go-forward plan, just in case anybody's curious as to what's going to happen next. So I think we'd wrap that up all into one episode. And so it is exciting, though, because of those of you that are backers for the DC20 Kickstarter know that there was really just recently on the 28th an update on the, is it the backer updates? Is that what they would be called?
Yeah, I think they're just backer updates.
All right. Whatever they're called. The thing that he posts online on that Kickstarter website, there was some information posted that it basically, to kind of give everybody an update and to kind of give a little bit of a progress tracker. And I thought this was kind of cool because first and foremost, if anybody's really curious about, our initial thoughts about DC20, what we think about the game and everything like that, we have made videos in the past about it. We're leaning on the positive side of DC20. It, of course, still is very early in the development process, still being in the beta. He's still designing subclasses. He's still getting the leveling cadence and everything like that all wrapped up, as well as he has two other pillars of gameplay to really present before we can say yay or nay fully on how the game comes together as a whole. But in general, one of the most important parts about his heroic fantasy is he got combat, and he got combat done pretty good, in our opinion. Having 4 action points, having the ability to go and slay monsters at level 1 and feel good about it, pretty cool. And as a DM, finding that people in armor are hard to kill makes sense. Which also means that my monsters, which are designed to kill Brent, definitely killed Jeff. Those little things like that. But quick update. So you guys saw the updates. There's going to be the 0.9 update up to level 4.
Yeah, that's cool. A big step. That the level 4, the level cap, and the subclasses supposedly when 0.9 coming out, and so each class will have 3 subclasses, at least framed out. I don't know if they'll be complete.
Yeah, so he says he's going to do 3 subclasses for each one. So, but he's not for the 0.9 update. It's only going to have 2 subclasses done.
And I got it excited prematurely, but that's okay. 2 is still pretty good. Having some subclasses so that we can see how that works as you get to level, as you head towards level 4. And it'll be neat.
Yeah, that will be neat.
And honestly, I'm curious to see how it changes the style of play when you get your subclasses and kind of get your specialization and everything like that, because it really felt like you guys were able to create very iconic style characters for each of the 2 that you tried. Now, obviously, we didn't try like, Spellblade or anything like that at this point, but I mean, your warriored and your maged pretty well, I'd say, even at level 1.
They did.
And they definitely felt heroic. So.
Yeah. So it is neat to see that at least at the initial design phase, he took the time to get those things pretty right, honestly. But some other updates, obviously, at Gen Con, he spent some time with Brennan Lee Mulligan and Abria Iyengar. Is that her name? The other
no idea
Dimension 20 GM that's on there. I think she also does Critical Role. I don't remember how those groups are all tied in together, but
I don't really watch either. So
yeah, they've done but so they had a game. They had a lot of fun playing it, and I think it kind of is weird when you get to that point when you like have a game and you're playing for these, like, is it fair to say star-studded people in this space? Because I feel like people on Critical Role and Dimension 20 and all that kind of stuff have a different stratosphere of fame than, say.
Well, yeah, they're famous in our niche.
Yeah, I mean, they're normal
TTRPG niche. They're famous, but once you leave the room of TTRPG people, their fame reduces dynamically.
Yeah. Although I have to say, before I knew Brendan Lee Mulligan as a role player, I did see him on College Humor, and I did love his skits on College Humor quite a bit. So I knew him as a comedian first and D&D player second. But I think it's kind of neat that almost turns into like a game pitch when you kind of go in there with that kind of thing, because you're like, is there a chance that these guys could feature this game on a stream
or play my game sometime?
Yeah, that has got to be a really intensely awesome feeling to even have that be like present there. So I'm excited for him. I haven't had a chance to watch his videos where he talks about it yet, but it does seem like it's a really cool aspect of it. So, so yes, I think DC20 is coming along fine. We'll probably pause just overall updates until there's something that's more substantive. Does that seem fair?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
no, I think I think at least 1.9 comes out. Maybe it's worth talking about, but or looking at. But yeah, I think pausing and moving on to cover other games.
Yeah. So
Probably
if
a
you're
good time.
So if you're wondering why there isn't as much DC20 content for the time being, it's because we've given it a good college try. We're going to wait till a little bit more comes out and probably have more of a full playthrough again when the game gets fully released sometime in the near future.
And with that, basically that means that we're taking a break from the Age of Worms DC20 campaign that we've been playing, and we're going to be trying a new game. So
yeah, a couple new games as we convert the next wing of DC, the Age of Worms, until like Tales of Valor or something. I have to learn a whole new system.
Yeah, as Mike sits down and gets out his abacus and starts converting monsters.
It will be different though, because it is basically like, because there are conversions out there that change you from 3.5 to 5, so I think that the fact that Tales of the Valiant is like 5.25 should make those monsters fairly easy to.
I thought it was more like 5.000000005.
Well, I haven't gotten through the book yet. As much as I've talked about it, I still have not to get through it because we've been playing so many other things between them. But people do think that it stays really close to the D&D 5th edition stuff based on what I've read. But there are obviously some of their own things that we'll have to explore a little bit later on a future episode. So for the next section, I think we should probably talk about spoiler alerts because obviously, if you're planning on playing the Age of Worms campaign path and you want to play the Whispering Cairn kind of on your own and you want to play in it as a player, the next things that we talk about are from the perspective of players, obviously, and my perspective as DMs as to what went well, what didn't go so well, where are maybe some areas that you could improve the Whispering Cairn to make it more exciting or interesting for your players, especially if you plan on and taking on this endeavor as a long-term campaign goal, because it is a very big campaign, even so much as that it is 12 adventures, and that kind of when you put them together, it actually yields a lot of story, let's say. So I think over this, I'm going to turn it over to you guys first. So like, what were your guys' thoughts about the first adventure, Age of Worms, getting back into 3.5? What were your overall impressions? What did you like the most about the Age of Worms adventure, or I guess Whispering Cairn, the first adventure?
Go ahead, Jeff. You seem to have something you want to say.
I would say for the most part, it's really well written, but it's also really oddly a product of its time.
Okay.
It's really rooted in 3.5, and there's a lot of puzzles without a lot of information or hints to get you there. Some of it is, I would say, for your average party, writing a room full of water with steps descending down into it where you can't really move or breathe, and then having a piece of a puzzle that literally stops you dead in your tracks and doesn't let you advance the storyline behind this huge room full of water that you, as far as you know, can't hope to get through without some sort of outside assistance. I think it's poor planning. Like, I think that part wasn't, one of the greatly written things. And I get that it's designed to make you fully explore everything and get out and really search. But I mean, it's one of those ones that's written like, okay, I'm going to search the desk. I'm going to pick up every object on the desk and look under it. I'm going to make sure there's not false drawers. I'm going to take out the drawers and make sure nothing's taped to the bottom of them. I'm going to turn the desk over to make sure that it's not covering some sort of a hidden panel on the floor.
Very dungeon crawler-esque approach.
Well, dungeon crawler-esque in a way that I don't think I particularly care for.
Okay.
I'm not the carry a 10-foot pole and tap 500 square feet of hallway for the next 3 hours. You know what I mean? To make sure that nothing sounds hollow, like tap.
No pitfalls, no tap.
Nothing. Yeah, there's no pitfalls. There's no traps. There's no hidden doors. I don't find that particularly useful, and I don't know that I still have the vocabulary to explain exactly how my steely-eyed adventurer is glancing into all the corners and lighting everything up with, this array of torches strapped to my body so that, no shadow goes unhidden kind of thing. I don't particularly enjoy that kind of searching. Like, I don't necessarily just want it hidden behind a roll. Like, I walk into a room, I roll the dice. Oh, I got a 20. I found 5 hidden doors and a hoard of dragon treasure. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's realistic either, but there's got to be some middle ground. But the way the adventure's written, and I just said that I like the writing, but
well, the question is do you like the story, like the premise of you starting off as adventurers?
I like the story, yes.
Diamond Lake, and basically getting this charge to go explore this cairn, and I guess the promise of additional threads that you can pull on.
The setting is vibrant and rife with plot hooks, and there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things to do. So, like, I had a lot of fun. I did. I had a lot of fun, and you worked your butt off to do the conversion, and that's much appreciated because it was well done. There were parts, because it was originally written for 3.5, that I have some quibbles with. Brent, what did you notice?
No, I mean, it's a very dungeon crawl, like you said. It's a very dungeon crawly adventure, which a lot of modern games sort of get away from a little bit. Of course, there's OSR games that a lot of people play now, which are more influenced by that, and I think that this kind of straddles a gap between that and modern games. But I think it was fun. I like the characters. That's really always going to be one of the things that I focus on. Is I liked the characters, Brom and why can't I remember your Zevrox, Brom and Zevrox. I like the characters. I like. I almost called him Xerox, which was what I was trying not to say. That's what I was. It wasn't that I forgot. It was that
I had an opportunity. It could have been Xerox Thunderspring.
Yeah, I was like, Xerox. No, that's not it. It's Zevrox. But the NPCs were good. I enjoyed the NPCs. Of course, there's things that happen in the game that that I feel are pre-dictated by the adventure that you're going to screw up as a player probably. One being some of the puzzles, and some of the clues are just going to be hard. Like I think we talked about the ever-burning torch at the end of the stream, the one that had the ever-burning torch in it, that we just totally ignored. And I just don't know. I don't know how, without drawing a weird amount of attention to it. I don't know.
I thought I did draw a weird amount of attention to it, honestly, because I was like, "Can you see this torch?"
Yeah, no, you'd almost have to point it out every single time we go in the room if you really wanted us to use it. I think just they didn't catch it and just letting it go was probably the best, the best approach. But because I think that's what's going to happen with some stuff like that.
Sure.
So yeah, there's things like that are going to be. I mean, and that wasn't really a puzzle. That was just sort of an item we could have used to make things easier. I did find one of the things that I did find restrictive that is because it's a pre-canned adventure is the almost video game. You have to do this to unlock this next step. You have to do this to unlock this step. Which I guess makes sort of sense in a dungeon sense, but I don't like ever that there's a situation where it's you can't. Nothing you can do will get you past this section, even if it's something completely off the wall. There's nothing you can do that if you don't solve this puzzle will get you past this event.
Yeah.
Which I don't always enjoy. I always feel like you should reward creativity. So if the players come up with something super weird that gets them past this part of the puzzle that I never accounted for, I feel like usually you should reward that. Not that we did that. Our plans were mostly stupid, but specifically regarding the wind tunnel is what I'm talking about specifically.
I don't know. I got into that room, man.
You did.
So here's
I couldn't do anything.
But there wasn't anything we could do at that point. Yeah.
But here's what's something that's funny about it, because this is when I found to be one of the logical inconsistencies, because I do like the story that it presents. You have this, I mean, it's really like the typical heroic journey. You start off in a small town, you find out the world is bigger than you find out these forces were at play, some things that are kind of mysterious and going
dastardly forces.
And so you basically answer that heroic call to action after kind of an introductory adventure and everything like that. I do like that. There were just some weird inconsistencies from the story perspective that you had to kind of like either account for or like understand, because first of all, like this is one of the things that I thought, and this is more like this is one of my gripes, I guess, is that in terms of like the part that you had mentioned, Brent, where like there's a specific way to solve a puzzle. Like I was like, well, I'm going to run this as close as I can. I made that personal commitment to running it as close as I can, just to test out the waters for this first time, because the next adventure I'm not going to run as close as I can. I'm going to run it in a way that makes sense because the first adventure, like here's some logical inconsistencies. So the wind tunnel that you guys were in, right? Well, that wind tunnel doesn't have an opening at the end unless you have all of the lit lanterns. Like there's no opening.
Right.
So your question is how did Alistair land to get in there?
Yeah, I don't know.
So this child of 13 years of age who'd run away to find his fame traveling into the Whispering Cairn somehow got past a puzzle that requires all the lanterns to be lit when one of the lanterns was taken from its place 60 years prior. So 30 years after he got there was a missing lantern. So how did he get into that room?
Oh, see, I would have never even thought of that, really. I never would have thought that far. I just figured he was with a group of adventurers that got their dumbasses killed like us. That's sort of what I assumed.
And you could, but that still doesn't answer the question. Well, how did they get into that room? If there's no
ever answered, he's just
it's
there.
just if you go on the forums, they're basically like, even Eric Mona is like, whoops.
But I mean, in a character sense, we have no sense of scale of timeline, so that doesn't bother me, because that's like a part you don't have to say, because like the players have no idea how long anything's been there.
But it's something that's revealed with good player interrogation of your setting, right? So if you guys interrogate the setting, because you have a journal, you have seeker rings, you have like these various components that if you try to investigate, you go, oh well, this party went missing 60 years ago, and then you go, but didn't Alistair say, like it is in the gravestones that was only 30 years ago? Like it's just like those little. To me, that bothers me, because the answer.
I guess I can see that.
It
makes more sense. And it makes more sense to the person telling the story. Like you'd run those inconsistencies.
So and it just, for me, I was like, oh, that's a little bit weird. And then obviously, the miniature side quest to try to get you to introduce to Filge and that whole thing. I was like,
that was a little weird.
I was like, oh, grunt, because you guys like get there and oh shucks, it just so happens that grave robbers came.
I thought that was a lot of fun, but it was definitely weird. Like I really enjoyed that part of it, but it was a little strange that it was like, oh, coincidentally, grave robbers just came and stole this shit.
Well, fortunately, those grave robbers got there right before you did.
No, it was like it's movie logic though. So like part of it's like.
It moved the plot. The weirder part to me was that we were supposed to like and work with a necromancer, sit down and have tea with him and have a chat.
Oh no, you were supposed to like put the screws in and interrogate him. I mean, really, there was a lot of ways that could have gone.
I know. We've been trying to. The player part of my brain, like. Once you know about things like waterboarding that are cheap, effective, and you can do almost anywhere, makes questioning prisoners, it turns it into a thing that I'm not comfortable role playing.
That's true.
Once you know they exist and are easy to do,
and honestly, torture usually isn't very effective, because they'll just say yes to anything that you ask after a while, after they're broken. So like getting real information out of somebody's, a thing. But also this is like, I try not to play my characters like total sociopaths. Like I try to play them like some sort of real human or dwarf, as it were, but I try not to play them like, I guess we gotta set him on fire now, just to make sure that he tells us the truth.
Exactly.
Does he have all his
I don't
fingers?
I don't want to torture him.
Yeah.
But when I ask, well, I'll tell you if you let me go. You're a necromancer. We're not letting you go.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I mean?
True.
Like, it just seems
Right,
like there's a natural impasse there.
And also, even his people that were working for him kind of referred to him as a bad guy. Like the shit that he was doing was bad. And so, like, everything that we had led up to the point was like, oh, this guy's an evil necromancer.
Yeah, the bad people were scared of him.
I think that there's always people just generally shoehorn necromancy into bad, right? I mean, it's just always like that. It doesn't have good perceptions. Yeah, messing with the dead, making them steal bodies from graves. I mean, obviously, those things in themselves aren't
if you
what
would have just
do-gooders
called
do.
him a physician or an undertaker, that at least
that would be
have been
hilarious.
slightly better.
And you really, like, they really pushed it home that he was a bad guy with the head. Like when we walked in the room and they're like, "Oh, there's a head there," and it's like, okay.
You're talking about the little statue with the head and a platinum piece,
yeah. The moment that's like, oh, there's a woman's head that he's holding. It's like, oh, well, that's probably, I mean, that
sounds evil.
That's serial killer territory. That's walking into a serial killer's house.
It does. There is a lot that paints him as maybe a less than savory character. How about that? I think we can agree.
Right? Yeah. But so what did they expect? I mean, did they expect you to fight him and capture him and torture him?
No, not torture him, but they probably expect you to
not implicitly.
I'm sorry, question him.
Yes, question him
in a secluded area where nobody will ever.
It's true.
With an orange and a sock.
Yeah, I'm not trying to go off the rails, but like. Maybe,
that's fine.
Maybe that part wasn't the best written either. Like,
well,
I get necromancers
like I said,
good foils.
No, I think that part was fantastically written, but I think your players are going to screw it up almost every time.
Well, we definitely did.
Unless, like I said, unless they're like, oh, he's evil, he's okay for us to, I don't know, put bamboo under his fingernails and set him on and burn him with a torch over and over again. Like, I could see people being like, and we've all been in parties like that, okay? Like, but
I like how Brent's defensive about this.
I think
everybody.
I
think, and I don't think it's right.
I think role playing
changed.
I think role playing has come a long way from that. And like I said, it's written from a different time where your player characters were expected to be more black and white. Like alignment is probably a thing when this adventure was written. So like, I'm chaotic good. He's evil, so I'm okay to do this stuff to him.
Or I'm lawful good. I should take him into the authorities and everything. So I think that it was interesting about that entire scenario. What I feel like is more about and I think that it would have been a much bigger payoff. And this is probably so I have a few recommendations that I would say based on how the adventure goes as to what's going to, what may make it better for the next person. So the first recommendation is that I think you need to spend more time in Diamond Lake establishing it as a place. Because right now, I think you're, and this is where, it comes into player work a little bit. Your players should be familiar with what Diamond Lake offers, what kind of town it is, the different places in that. And I think as a GM, you should give your players common knowledge as to what happens there. And it would even be fine to have some small little, I wouldn't say adventures, but maybe a session or two in Diamond Lake, just to get your players acclimated to the plays, getting them used to what's going on before you immediately hook them with something so that they can, they may have known, Cullen, the albino half orc. They may know Smenk a little bit more closely so they can, they can know if they should be in opposition with them or maybe even work for him. Because at one point, Brent, your character was possibly going to work for Dowerstone, right? One of the mine managers, which would have given you a different perspective on many of the upcoming things.
No, I think that's good. I think that's a good observation.
Yeah, I'm not going to say how you should necessarily do that with your group, but I really think that if you want your group to appreciate Diamond Lake and what it has to offer, you should have them spend time in Diamond Lake doing something, just and I hate it when you do this in RPGs, because I have been playing a little bit of the War Within, and they're like, oh, you need to go find where the inn is. You need to go find where this is. And he's like, just so you can kind of orient yourself into the new location. I mean, it almost feels like if you have an adventure that can help you do that a little bit before you dive into the meat and potatoes of the Whispering Cairn, that is probably going to be for the better, because I think then you start getting more engaged with it a little bit.
I think we might have been. I think in my head it was more of an idyllic town, and it's really more of a town run by the mine cartel owners, and
what's the town that's down on its luck? Because obviously
Diamond Lake is more like the Berkeley Pit and Butte, with the pretty colored water, but no birds land on it because they know that they die if they touch the water. There's no fish. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's.
I think this kind of comes down. I think so. This is something I think we should do in a kind of an episode at some point. Is I think really we should have a conversation about player knowledge and character knowledge, and like what should like how much should you tell your players about the world, or how much or what to do if somebody knows too much about the world and you're kind of half-assing it. Like I think that would be a good conversation, because I think that's what it comes down to, is like we probably should know Diamond Lake better than we did as the people that grew up there or live there. And that knowledge may have played into some of our decisions.
But here's the question though, is it, and this can go out to anybody in the comments can answer this question. This very simple question. If your DM said, okay, I really want to have a big campaign and I've got a little tiny almanac of important places and people for this town, and they gave you a list of 30 different sites, 15 different people, and small little summaries of who they are and all that kind of stuff, how many would read that?
Oh no, they're not going to read it. No, this is something this is something I would do at the beginning of the game, and I would just kind of tell them kind of a little bit about what key stuff that I want, or like you said, an adventure where you introduce the stuff, like a prequel, pre-adventure to where you introduce the stuff, just so you know.
Yeah.
Or it's one of those instances where that proactive role-playing thing comes up and you have them build the town.
Or even better, this is a great opportunity, especially if you have like more players. So I think with 2 people, you only would reveal so much. This would be a great prologue adventuring town. Like, because you guys having a prologue adventure to kind of slip into the skin of the characters, I think would have really been helpful, because you could have easily interacted with different facets of the town.
That's true.
How the prologue goes.
No, we could have. A little more tone setting. I guess I'm thinking of it as setting the tone.
Yeah.
For just is this the kind of town that you would bring your family to and settle down, or is this the kind of town where when you walk into a bar you expect to get hit by somebody getting thrown out the doors as you're trying to go in because another bar scuffle is just
depends on the bar. Yeah.
I don't even mean tone. I mean just like would we know about Smank before we ever, and how bad or good he is before we ever went on the adventure? Like, should we know who works for him? Would we have some kind of ideas? What does the garrison actually do within the town? Is their reputation good or bad? Like things like that, because it is going to be hard. Like, and that's why I say it should probably be an episode about this, because it is hard, and it's hard to tell. It's hard to gauge what's too much information to give the players. Like if you're giving the players a booklet of like 30 different sites and you're telling them to read it, just expect to have not have given them that. They should read it, but they probably aren't.
But it is interesting though, because I'm sure there are some people that do and there are some people that don't. But I think that there's an enrichment component when you look at people that get the most out of their games is the people that really invest themselves into the world and like relate to it. So like, and I think that would make it more compelling, so that as we talked about with proactive role playing, you could make goals that make more sense, because you can say, hey, you know what, this would be a really good time for me to have a short-term goal of.
Yeah, but again, it comes down to the type of player that you have in your group. If you have players that want to build strong characters that they're invested in, then the players are going to be great. If you have the guy that just wants to kind of come and hang out, make jokes occasionally and roll dice, then that guy's probably going to be less likely.
I think it was somebody that made a really good comment on our final proactive.
Yep, that's the guy that I was
audience players that are just there for the ride, and other people, they're okay with. I mean, they're there to have fun, but obviously they're there not to be in the.
They don't really want they don't really want the spotlight. Yeah, one of our commenters did talk about that. And
that was really good.
That's true. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I tried to bring up in the discussion is there are people that aren't going to want to do that.
Sure.
No.
Yeah. And so I think I think in looking at that, if you don't mind me getting into my other recommendations, is that the next recommendation outside of like getting people to like familiarize themselves with the town, maybe either through a prologue quest or like a intro quest to get them in there, is to change some of the dynamics for how the Whispering Cairn operates. First of all, if you don't have a player that has the ability to breathe underwater, see underwater, or anything like that, that's dumb. You know what? You know what else was in that submersible area? There was also a zombie, apparently. So there was supposed to be a zombie that was there for 60 years that was just chilling next to a water elemental.
I didn't mind the water elemental. And we thought we would find a trap, but
I thought it was like one or the other, right? Like I thought you could either do the zombie that is supposed to be like a seeker that had gotten zombified, because he perished or something like that, or you could do the water elemental. And I thought the water elemental was more interesting, but I think that bath area would be just as engaging if you had waist high water and not underwater, right? Like you could still use some thematic elements, like you could have the water elemental pull people down to have them start drowning, or build exhaustion levels or something like that. You could still use the terrain to your advantage, but not make it like an impossible piece of terrain, because for you two, you had no way to pass it. Like
I think that would be a good change.
Mm-hmm. Like
for the very reason, because either one or two things are going to happen. If you leave it in and you have a party like ours, like we were going to go swimming in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a party that does that, you pretty much guarantee that you're going to kill them. Like you're basically asking for a TPK.
I think the water maybe being chest height, waist height, something like that. So the water elemental can still live in there, but you don't have to actually be able to breathe underwater.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah. And it gives you that sense of tension too, because you can add those elements. Like, I mean, that's an Alien movie right there. And I just watched Aliens Romulus, where you could see like, all of a sudden the water ripples. There should be still water. Why is the water rippling? What's under the water? Is there fish? Is there other things? And then having that elemental just kind of like like a tsunami. Yeah. Oh, that would have been a cool scene.
I think it's better, and maybe we didn't fully understand, but I mean, the water seemed pretty impassable. Like,
it was like
stairs, and it's.
Well, it's up to the ceiling. Yeah, there was once you were in that area, the premise being that the water elemental had filled all the different areas out of spite to its previous owners, and then the water just filled in until it no longer filled in up to a certain point, and then that was just.
Yeah, and I think and even with the breathing potions that we had, like if you hadn't said we just could walk. Like the potions let us just walk in water like it was no big deal. Like if we were swimming or something like that, like there's a lot of other problems that would cause for your party.
Yeah, you get a minus 13 on every swing of your weapon.
Like trying to introduce real water physics in that. Like I said, you're basically gonna kill the party, like almost assuredly.
And you could like that based on what I was reading. That was an easy place to kill parties, because like what would typically 100%. Happen based on and what I read from the forest I went into the forest and I read some trees. When I went into the forums, people mentioned how like the party would split a lot in this Whispering Cairn. Like there would be people doing different things, and so like there would be two people like you guys would go into this water, and all of a sudden there'd be this water elemental, and they would just hope to flee before it killed them. Like that was always a good one. But then the fact that it's next to an angry hive of acid beetles is not a promising escape route if you don't go with the beetles.
Right. And you have to go and to continue doing and this is another problem with the way a little bit of this old design is you have to go down there to get that red thing.
Yeah. Otherwise you hide treasure behind the impassable puzzle, I'm okay with that. Like if you want to hide magic items and riches beyond compare, that's okay, but to hide the plot device.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I made that executive decision, is that the air had to come from somewhere when it opened its mouth. So there was an opening big enough for you guys to sort of, at least one of you to pass. That's what at least canon wise made it so that Alistair, who somehow outsmarted the trap, got into this next room and then died, like fell to his death basically after getting hit by a meatball or iron ball, whatever they were.
It's an ambitious work though. I mean, it's big. Like it already feels like there's all these things waiting for us out there as things go on.
It's huge.
And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we haven't even heard about.
Yeah. And so
and there's and back to the continuity thing, like because it's so big, like it would be hard to keep continuity through the whole thing.
Well, and that's why I'm gonna take a little bit of a different approach on the next one. I've already kind of started to lay the groundwork for it, just in how we ended that last episode and like what we're gonna be approaching with that. But I think that those are really just like my biggest areas of concern with that was the fact that the Red Lantern was literally locked behind an underwater shit fest.
Death trap.
like
let's be honest, it's an underwater death trap. Like
it is hugely impactful. Even in DC20, the underwater combat rules aren't very favorable for the players, so it would have been bad.
Well, they shouldn't be. Like fighting underwater is almost impossible. Like
it's really stupid
unless it's magic. Like you would never. Like this is why people die caving is because it's. Like, and they're not fighting anything. They're just caving.
Yeah, they're just going in those long underwater tunnels or whatever.
Yeah, if you're underwater and you can't get out to breathe, you're probably going to die. And that was one of the reasons why I was kind of like, oh, well, we have an hour. Well, like everything underwater is like slower. So it's like an hour really isn't that long if we're searching every nook and cranny of this place. And like, so if you're like the players, like, God forbid somebody tried to hold their breath. Like make a constitution test. Oh, you crit failed?
Well, and the worst part is that like in most games, and I think DC20 is no different, is that like you have a number of minutes, and I don't know if you've tried to swim underwater for 3 minutes and how far you've gotten, but
exactly,
I know I'm not going to make any significant amount of discoveries in 3 minutes of underwater darkness.
Exactly.
So I think those would be my main recommendations. Is make it just chest high water or belt high water, depending on your race or whatever it is, so that they can still explore it without the other stuff, but you can still have tactical components to the fact that it's half a swimming pool. Also, I really feel like you have to set up I think you should set up the stuff related to the land stuff a little bit better. Like you guys, you could learn about like the plague that hit the town beforehand, so you'd be more knowledgeable about it. You guys could learn about more like, and I kind of hinted at zombies in the hills and all that stuff, but you could also learn about grave robberies, like people are noticing their dead missing and all that kind of stuff. That could be a great prologue example for Brent's character, who's been asked to go investigate this series of, basically, as the militia's gone out, they've noticed that all these frontier homes that are kind of abandoned from that they're seeing.
Yeah, a little bit of foreshadowing within the adventure for some of that stuff would have been good.
Yeah, so it would have made it so that there would have been like, oh shit, we're going back to that grave robbing thing. Let's figure this shit out. And then
as opposed to us opening the Whispering Cairn and them saying there's a lot more undead lately, and me just going, probably has nothing to do with what we did.
Turns out it had nothing. It literally
what a weird coincidence.
Yeah, what a weird coincidence. Machinations at play. Yeah, so I think those are kind of my bigger, like, what I would suggest just from this. And I also think Phil should probably be a more interesting character and not so diabolical. Like, I feel like you could take that head thing off, and I think it would have changed his character considerably. Like, if he just had a taxidermied, like, animal there, like, in its mouth it had a platinum piece or something, like a mink or
well, I mean, there's a lot you'd have to, because like he read Psychopath when we went in and there was the dinner table set up. Like you probably want to change that too. The dinner table,
I like the dinner table though.
The Texas Chainsaw, yeah, but that makes him a Texas Chainsaw bad guy.
It feels like at the very least he's a sociopath.
That is a scene from Texas Chainsaw Massacre when they walk in the house and there's the dead bodies all around the table.
But if you sit at the table, they animate and they talk about how cool he is.
Who would sit at that table? And the second they moved, they'd be striking down these semi-automated zombies.
I think Brent is
I think
like,
if you want that to work, you have to have them talking when, like, the way I would set that up is you go in the hallway and you hear talking, and then you open the door and you see them talking about how cool he is. And try to make it more comical than just horror story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because like I said, like I've seen that scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre where the bodies are just limply laying at the table with food on the plates, and it's like this guy eats with corpses. That's not okay.
That's not normal. Yeah, it's like there's a few check boxes on that. This is a psychopath.
He goes from lonely wizard in his tower to scary wizard in his tower fairly quickly.
Yeah, and entering the room, this fetid smell of carnal pits and death, and it's like
this guy's not normal.
This isn't fun.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
So,
or you just say you enter the room. There's these bodies all around the table, and they're all wearing party hats.
Yes,
that would have done it for me. I would have been like, "Oh, this is a cool guy. Like I'm okay with it." Party hats.
There are 4 of the largest incense burners you've ever seen at the corners of the table to prevent the stench of the dying from permeating the air. Something like that, right? That because it literally sounded like we walked into Hannibal Lecter's playground.
Oh, it's totally. It's a Chainsaw Texas. It's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay,
it's
100%. We don't have to go Silence of the Lambs.
100% Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was 100% I was picturing like bones hanging from the walls and like the people. And
he's too clean for that stuff. But I think
whatever he had corpses in his cupboards. We discussed that. That's not clean.
But it does kind of present as one note evil bad guy though. Like
it does.
He kind of like you walk in and he's like reanimated the Land family to defend his house. He's got a dinner table full of corpses. He has a head presenting with a platinum coin.
Yeah, it doesn't come across as quirky mad scientist. It comes across as evil necromancer. Yeah.
And I think that there was in that gap. There was room to have a plot device that makes him a little more, somebody you might be willing to talk to, as opposed to killing on sight.
Yeah, if you want him to be more amicable, like make it like instead of dead people, make it like animated statues or something at the table that talk about
or even animated skeletons where the flesh is cleaned off. Or
something. I wouldn't go. I would say that's still pretty grim to me. I would say just make it something. I mean, it would have been if it was taxidermied creepy animals, it would have been less weird than it being human bodies
in various states of decomposition.
Yeah.
No, it was pretty gross.
And part might be your audience, like because I definitely immediately upon entering the room, I was like, oh, I've seen this movie before.
I know how this ends poorly if we don't play a long ride.
Yeah, somebody's coming out of that closet with a chainsaw. I know it's gonna happen.
Yeah. So I think that was, I mean, those are really the 3 areas that I could see using some improvement to like help introduce that. Because I agree with you guys. I don't think that things should be locked away. And I think there should be an alternative path for you to get into the Cairn without having to find the red lantern. I was seriously debating having, you guys be able to roll against Arcane or something like that to solve the puzzle lock or something like that, and have another way in because I always have, for me, it's always interesting an exercise to kind of think like, what would be the point of an architect of this burial tomb to have basically just light up the candles and then go up this thing and then that opens a door. Like, what's the what's the point? It's kind of like that block that you guys found in there. That's that's big stone block that
the big heavy stone block
that was just kind of there,
worth a lot of money, but you can't move it.
Yeah, like
the
well, I'm talking about the one that that like basically separated you the first time where you went off and found
the door.
Okay, I was like, what's the purpose of this in this scenario? Like, why would this have been open to have a block come down anyways? Like, because I mean, if you think about it, like Egyptians and everything like that, not to like get too historical here, but when they were building their pyramids or their burial tombs and stuff like that, usually the workers, I don't think, had a good time at the end of that, right? So everyone was just like, okay, we're closing up shop.
I am intimidated now because I feel like if I ever make a dungeon in any of my games, I have to like make it make sense, and that's probably gonna. I'm far from being able to do that, so you'll have to. I expect future forgiveness. That's what I'm asking of you.
Well, but all honesty, and I don't want to knock anybody that tries to put together a dungeon. I think that dungeons are hard. Like, I think that making dungeons seem interesting to go into, because I personally am not the kind of guy that goes, oh, you go down a 20-foot corridor and find that interesting, right? I think some people will find the cartography of mapping out a dungeon kind of interesting. Some people will find the rooms in the dungeon very interesting, like each room has a purpose. But I think the dungeon itself needs a story, and how well does that story like withstand criticism? You know, like if it's a good dungeon, it's a good story, and it can kind of hold up to scrutiny and stuff like that. That's at least my thoughts. Now, obviously, everyone's like, well, where the fuck is your dungeon, Mike? And I'll be like, I play pre-canned stuff. I get to criticize. I don't have to worry about it.
That's what I'm saying. If I ever make a dungeon, I have to try and make it make sense now, and I'm not good at that. I remember I'm the one that came up with the setting that is so surreal that if you say, "Oh, well, there's this business there," and I go, "Okay," and you're like, "It wasn't there last time." It's like,
Halamarja.
Exactly.
It works. So, okay. So I think that, you know, in terms of like what everyone can kind of expect next, that's kind of a breakdown of the Age of Worms, Whispering Cairn. The adventure is solid with work, but I wouldn't say that if you just wanted to run this adventure without making any tweaks or planning for this adventure, you're gonna run into a lot of weird questions that you may not have the answer for as a game master running this. I think you really need to take the time, dissect it, and you have to go deep on this one, because there are some things you have to decide how you want to handle that don't make a lot of sense. And then smart play, because players are smart too. Like you know, I mean, behind every dumb decision is made as a player that I've ever done. I know that I'm personally smart, and I have those aha moments, you know, where I go, hey, how long has this been here? Didn't you just say in that other room that this was 60 years? You know?
The moment I pick up a character sheet, apparently I lose like 50 points off my IQ.
You're just like, oh, how should I play a game? Gronk smash.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, if there's a puzzle where it's like, okay, you have a square, a triangle, and a circle. Weirdly enough, you found rods that are a square, triangle, and a circle. How do you think you solve the puzzle? Shove them all in the square.
Do they fit?
Does it work?
No, you can only put one in. I put the circle in the square then and try to fit the other ones in.
I jam them all into different holes. Yeah, exactly. So,
okay. So, so final thoughts. Look forward to us trying out Tales of the Valiant, coming to a actual play live stream near you at some point. We're going to probably play some other games just in between the Age of Worms Part 1 and Age of Worms Part 2. So if you have any games that we should try, let us know. We'd be curious to see what people are playing out there. We do plan on playing Cosmere in the very near future, probably on Monday, our upcoming live stream. And then, of course, we hope that we have fun with that, because it's a take on D&D that seems to have a lot of interesting tweaks to mechanics that could make it a much more fun and interesting system. So, and with that, any other final thoughts for you guys?
No, I had a lot of fun with both DC20 and Age of Worms. There's some quibbles with both, but DC20 is a work in progress, and Age of Worms was written 20 years ago for a different system. So.
Right, and again, any pre-canned adventure, like Mike said, read through it. You know, think about your players, what they might struggle with. Mm-hmm. I think that's the nature of any pre-canned adventure, especially older ones.
Sure,
because they're written for a style of play that isn't always the same anymore.
Yep. Break down doors and steal everything. Perfect. Mm-hmm. So, okay. Well, with that, if you guys have any comments that you would like to say in the comments section for your own experience with Age of Worms, if you want to leave us a like, maybe tell other people that you like the podcast, you know, you enjoy what you get out of it, hit that subscribe, hit the share button, do all those fancy things. We're really happy because we hit 400 subscribers. So we thank everybody that's come along for this journey so far. We appreciate you more than you know. So thank you. And Jeff, if they want to talk to us outside of YouTube, how would they do that?
They should hunt us down on Facebook, Threads, or Twitter, and interact with Brent constantly throughout the day. We are at Rollwise. Ask as many questions as you can on social media. Somebody will answer. Or you can email us, rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always, thank you for joining us. We appreciate having you. And like Mike said, to reiterate, 400 subscribers is a big milestone for us. We're really looking forward to hitting that 500. So please share us around, make people listen to and subscribe. And roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there, everybody.
See you guys.
Thank you.